I just went to see how you're tagging it, because that taxonomy or folksonomy looks like something I didn't know about until very recently. But I can't go into the 2-column view on this because I don't seem to have edit rights.
Let me I just pulled this one up because I had the
It worked for me. I just clicked on the little pencil thing and it took me straight in.
this one is the editable link, Philip, so.
Oh, look at that.
The other one I had just published the link. So
when you're looking at the published one, you have to press the little pencil to then go to the editable one. Okay.
But the published one is the link that I just put in our header, so that when new stewards join and they haven't gotten onboarded to CloudRun or they can actually see the document.
Gotcha. Okie dokie. So, in other words, if I create something in notepad.diglife.coop, I can't share that. No. When I tried to share one with you the other day, Christine, you said I have to publish it. Why do I have to publish it first if I send you the link?
Well, I think that if you send me the link and we're both signed into Notepad, then I should be able to see it and edit it per permissions. But if I'm not signed into Notepad, which not every new steward will be, because things happen in different orders, I just wanted to post the publish link there.
Thank you.
And I think that you were trying to show that to a bigger group, so I wanted you to publish it so anybody like Joss could see it.
Perfect. Thank you for explaining that. So we have this tagging approach at the bottom of every document so that we can find them more easily.
Mm-hmm.
And
sort of instead of folders.
Where do I find that protocol so I can observe it now? You just made it up.
I just made it up. It's a folksonomy. I just did what made sense.
Oh,
what made sense to you. If I see the one that I need, I can just put in there.
Okay, cool. So you did it on the member, the draft for the member newsletter, and now I've seen it here. So you've just started this, and it makes sense to you. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, Joaquin started it.
Oh, did he? Oh, see, I don't know where these things come from. It's lovely.
I didn't know how to make it be like yellow, and I wouldn't looked at the markdown there.
It looks like it's created a sort of an anchor on the published page or something.
What? What do you say, Graham?
I'm looking at the published version of the document, and I can see it's like it's created a little anchor, a hypertext anchor on the page. The way that
they do that both on the CodianD edit. Yeah, they do it on both sides, Graham. If you go to view mode, you see that anchor thingy too.
If you wanted to send somebody a link to a specific part of a longer note, for example, you could get them to that heading. That's great.
And then if I wanted to see everything that was tagged stewards, does it work in that sense?
I'm gonna let Joaquin. I don't think any of the notepads show up in your notepad unless you've opened one. So like how they show up in the portal and how we can actually put them all in one box, I'm not sure.
You can use the out-of-the-box version of Notepad. Here, let me quickly show you this. So if you go to this CodianD thing, this is the out-of-the-box screen where you can actually search by tags, right? So if you go protocol here, you see it comes up with that tag and you see all of the protocols at once, right? Or if you search by keyword, I think it goes out to the titles, right? So you can do that here in the next field, and it gives you all the documents with that keyword, right?
Proper, full-on bow selector tag. It's a tag. It's a proper tag.
It's a proper tag. That's right. The application is using that. And what I'm planning to do is to actually use that same tag later on the Diglife .coop website, right? So if you go to Diglife, you go to one of the sections here. There's a new Notepad section. Sorry,
Okay.
this one here, right? So the idea is to have a filter here on the same page where you can quickly filter down by these tags here, right? So if there's a protocol tag, we can use that as as sort of a predefined link on top here. Click on that and you filter all of the content by that tag.
So
And
those
eventually, oops, sorry.
those documents are tagged in the same way.
Say again?
Those documents that we're looking at now, are they tagged in the same way as the one that we're focusing on, or these tags are created in some other way?
Yeah, well, it's as Christina said, a folksonomy, right? So we have to make sure that we're using the right tags here.
But it is just that little markdown block that you can see in the
Yeah.
note that we have.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
And Joachim, we're eventually going to have it so that if it's tagged ops, it doesn't show up when you click on Notepad in the main one. And if it's tagged projects, it doesn't show up in ops, right?
That's right.
It'll be
So
domain
that's right.
specific.
Exactly. Yeah. So you go to a different section here, like projects, and then those should actually show you only the project related ones. And in order to do this, obviously you need to put the right tag at the bottom, right? So this would then say, let's say projects or projects domain, something very specific that I can recognize. And then those will be the ones that will show up in that view here, right?
It's all a work in progress.
No, that's lovely. It's just good to know. Thank you. Is there a reason that we put the tags at the bottom instead of at the top? I just got it up.
Of the cards?
Of the document. I'm just thinking whether that's
It
just
doesn't matter, does it? Where you put them?
doesn't matter. I guess it doesn't matter.
Doesn't
does
matter. Right.
it? Okay, cool. Just checking. Sweet, love it.
Where would we like to take notes for this call?
In a notepad with the tag.
Awesome.
uh,
Do we want notes? Like we want Joachim? We had originally a Google Doc that just was like a year's worth of notes, and then eventually we would go, that's too long.
Right.
We'd
Right.
move it somewhere else. Do we have a notepad for each day, each month?
No. I was thinking about that too. I think we need to find a balance here. To say this is maybe a monthly thing that we start new, or a quarterly thing, depend on the amount of content, right? Certainly not daily, or for each meeting. That's
Not weekly. I like doing quarterly. That sounds great.
well, yes. I guess so. As in by calendar month, not some obscure exact quarter of the year date that we might not know when it goes from one to the next. But January, February, March being one quarter, and April, May, June. Yeah, okay. Yeah, nifty.
Awesome.
When I worked at Mars, it was really did my head in, because at Mars they have a 13-month year. Every month is 4 weeks, and I'm sure it was done for good reason.
Because
But
Mars
for 2.5
probably has that.
Yeah, but it was just like, this is doing my yeah. Anyway,
Steve, are you already dived in and making a note for us, or should I do that?
No, I was going off track, thinking about if we were providing all
like
of this
that.
as a service,
Mhm.
what are the standard docs that would be provided?
Mhm.
yes. So basically, a template stuck
Yeah.
in their instance.
Because looking at when Joachim was going through that, and you search for protocol, Joachim, you get lots more documents that I get when I search for protocol.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So then I was wondering, so what controls the access rights to all of these other documents?
That's what I was saying. Is in the portal, if you look at the notepads yellow button, and you click on any of those notes that Joachim has, or I have, I think some of mine show up. I'm not sure.
But
I don't know how to make them show up in the portal. But once you open a note, it will show up in your pile.
I understand that, but if you search for a tag, do you only find documents that you have read?
That you have access to, I believe.
That you have accessed. Not even that you have access to, Joachim. It's just you have accessed and have access to.
So that's
like
the concern.
anything that's free and open, that I haven't clicked on doesn't show up in my search,
Oh,
which I think
interesting.
is a feature. Because eventually you want to have a
well-
whole bunch, and you just want the pile that you've been working with.
Because
So
I was trying to find a document that wasn't one that I've read, and I couldn't.
I was about to say, Christina, I'm not so sure it is a feature because your discovery process is the search bar.
Yes, but if you know that the discovery of stuff that you haven't read is in the
Yeah.
portal, and Joachim, like I can see all of the notes that I haven't accessed in the portal, then that becomes the big messy box of notes for the whole collective. And my interface on CodeMD is the stuff that I want to work with. I don't want to sort through 4,000 notes from everybody's projects.
So
I
basically,
think it's a feature.
if you know what you don't know, then it's a feature.
You know what you don't know.
Okay, that's all right then.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing is that if you go in to look at a document to find out if it's one you're interested in, then you can't ever get rid of it.
Ah, that is a question for the maestro here.
Jeez, it's not until you go through these little design decisions you realise, how much Google thought through on GDocs.
It's like an electron microscope, right? You don't actually know what you're looking for, and when you found it, it's moved.
Okay, back to the agenda.
Sorry, yes.
I can set up a.
I just started one.
Oh, you have, thank you.
So there we go. I haven't done anything in it.
Oh, Bags, I do the tagging.
All right. What is the aim of the steward circle? Can we define that? We have a lot of stewards here. Yeah, I bet you have an idea on what our aim is.
Do you want to use this template?
Which one?
I just pasted it in.
Sure. Except for now we have 2 piles of tags, so pick bottom or top, guys. Everybody's too fast.
The ones at the bottom are wrong, aren't they?
All right, top it in.
Okay, let me take that out. Gone. Okay, enough typing here.
Okay. What is the aim of the steward circle?
What are we working on? The aim of the circle. Is this a quiz?
It's a quiz. Yeah. The stewards do what?
Help out other people.
Sure.
And help each other.
Sure. I'm
obviously missing something by the time of your voice.
I think it's specifically. Yeah, you want to say it, Sophia?
Well, I think of it typically as like handling all the necessary operations to keep the collective as a whole alive and thriving.
Create effective systems and processes for our collective to enact our mission, decide what are essential operations for the collective, and support effective coordination across essential operations teams.
That was great, Jim.
Yay!
That's what it says in the channel header.
The header came from our work team's work.
Copy that.
So
Copy
does
that
that
over.
does that make sense
Let's
to
do.
everybody? That the steward circle specifically, you know, we'll help anybody. We help the help desk stuff, but specifically we're coordinating among the ops teams to keep the collective open and running. It's the non-value producing ops projects that have to happen to keep the lights on.
Gotcha. Perfect. Handing around drinks and cheese straws.
I want a little tiny umbrella.
Why did you call that non-value producing?
It's like marketing, branding, member orientation type of things that really are not easily service commodities that you could put in like a box of
Okay, but I'm
Like
lost with the idea that it's not value producing. It seems like
It's
a
valuable.
it's
I mean,
valuable.
it's
for
value
sure, yeah.
producing insofar as that the collective is valuable as a whole, but it's not like revenue generating, like like cooperation as a service or like the maps or like deploying the portal would be.
Of course, but without it, those won't be profitable either.
Right.
Yeah,
Which is why they're
exactly.
just projects and we're the ops.
Oh, so we're meta value.
Meta value.
All right.
I really found that useful when Sophia made that distinction
Mm-hmm.
between like revenue generating and stuff to keep the lights on, because
Good.
that's like that like pares down what we need to do as stewards, and then the projects can be this space where people do exploring experimentation stuff
At the edges.
at the edges. Yes, exactly.
Lovely. Thank you.
For the steward circle, what is our governance pattern? We have governed by consent by the steward circle unless the decision affects the whole collective, in which case we use open participatory inquiry, which are interested to see how that emerges. I've definitely gotten feedback that if people can't make the calls, they feel left out on all sorts of stuff happening here across many teams. So we need to fix that. That's something that will not be sustainable moving forward. So is there a recognize when we are making a decision? And number two, give 24 hours and say, hey, a decision's been made, check that channel. And people who really care can be, alerted.
I think cross-channel communications is important. We've tried taking notes in channels, although it hasn't been too successful. I think that's important, and I think to some extent we need to have these recordings for people to review if they can't attend the meetings. Although they may not have to do it often, they should be available if they have to do it. There was something key that they should be informed about that took place.
So I guess that's an action for the bottom of the notes, is we need to figure out where to put recordings and how to make them searchable. And I would love to just have a habit of copy pasting the little actions and decisions section of the notes and putting that with the link to the notepad in the channel.
Sounds
After a
like
meeting.
plan. Sounds good.
Sophia, do you have any thoughts on decision making and recognizing when we are making a decision?
What do you mean by
slow down?
recognizing when you're making a decision?
Well, take the example of I had the Key team and the Genie team And it was the people that were showing up that ended up melding into what's becoming Sense Compass. And some people who didn't show up felt left out because we're just going fast. And so if there's a way to say, hey, we made a decision, let's hold off on activating that for 24 hours and we put it in some place where that team is.
To get feedback, yeah.
And I think that the excitement of the team that's there and going, okay, we made a decision, let's go, can sometimes overrule the people who are not there just because we're excited and we're like doing stuff or we want to get our stuff done. So,
but that doesn't seem like a lack of recognizing that a decision has been made. It's more of like a not following the habit of reporting back to whoever is affected by that decision.
I think it's both. I mean, I definitely see like just because we do push decisions to the edges, I definitely see people just saying, you know, not recognizing that they're making a decision that shouldn't be so much at the edge, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, but making a decision at the edge is supposed to be that those are the people on the front lines who are affected by the decision and enacting the decision. But when it's something as core as like naming the group as a whole or like making like really key strategic decisions, those really shouldn't be at the edge. Those should be at the core and then, you know, be seeking feedback from the whole group.
This is a challenge that I think we've had since we started, which is we want to make decisions and we want to make them fast, but we also want to include people who couldn't join a call. And so
I actually just realized that I have to go. I have a client call and I just looked at the time. Sorry.
Bye.
I'll see how it goes to catch up.
Bye. So we have this challenge where, so for example, there is no way we could reach a decision on a Civi CRM on this call if Graham wasn't here. So to me, there's a sort of a sensible middle ground between giving a group of people who can synchronize decision-making powers, and if you weren't there, sod you, and this idea where you've got to just park it and put it there until everyone's had the chance to have a look at it and dissent if they wish, which is kind of like, well, how long is long enough? Is it a day? Is it a week because they may be on holiday, in which case it could be 2 weeks? You know, so I wonder if there's just a common sense middle ground, which is identifying for a particular decision who a core team is that needs to really have thumbs up, and then leave the rest of the individuals with the opportunity to do a thumb down if they can stumble across the decision and decide that it is worth their dissent. Sort of a hybrid of thumbs up and thumbs down, depending if you're in the thumbs up group or the thumbs down group.
Yes, I like that, Philip. This aligns well. I mean, this is a meta conversation, right, in the steward group. So it's not about the decision itself, but sort of routing decisions to the right people, right? And I think one thing that we could do is, you know, if I go back to, let me share my screen for a second. If I go back to this governance protocol, I was thinking, you know, a while back, I think what the stewards can do is say out loud that, hey, this needs, say, more clarity before we can even get to a decision. Hey, this needs a call for objection at this stage because it's critical. We recognize it in the steward circle as a critical decision for the collective or for the domain, whatever it is, right? So we need that piece now executed, right? Or we need just call for action, you know. So we're ready. We already made that decision. And we're tracking sort of the ongoing activity implementation of that thing, right? Or looking at even in the future, I think also, is there a need for a call for funding for that kind of thing to move it forward, right? And that ties, I think, nicely also into Christina's thinking on these reports kind of thing, right? So what's going on in your space. That to me is kind of part of the action alert, just to keep people in the loop of what is happening here. But in terms of the governance protocol, I think what the stewards circle can do is to say, hey, we do need some clarity on this thing. We're not even ready to make a decision. No, we're ready now. We need a call for objection now to see if we go ahead or stop this kind of thing, right? So this, from a kind of a meta framework here we're talking about in the stewards, I think is a doable thing.
So dare I ask, do we have the people on the call who can give that a thumbs up? And yeah, that call for clarification is essential. That call for dissent is the one for me that needs some guidance. At what point is a group making a decision? Hello, Les. At what point does a group that's making a decision know that it's of a sufficient gravitas to go out and call for objections?
That's exactly, I think, the function of the steward circle, because they're the only ones who actually are aware of what the activities are across the collective, right? So they can relate these decisions in terms of, this is a bigger one, this is a smaller one, this can be pushed out to the edge, that's fine, let them do what they do there, in their circle. And see that. I mean, that's kind of the learning curve we are on here in the steward circle, to understand the relationship between important decisions for the collective and smaller ones that are not central.
Yes, Les, we're trying to operationalize sociocratic process as a bunch of stewards who are trying to facilitate a level of coordination between the various parts of the collective, and we've instantiated a new way to tag notes in order that we can discover them after the fact. And in that, you can see that in the link I've just shared in chat. And at the moment, we're just trying to work out how decisions are made, where especially critical in a voluntary, asynchronous, distributed organization. It's hard, I think, to do it sociocratically when everyone's together for 40 hours a week, just trying to make sure how we won't effectively piss anyone off for having excluded them from a decision-making process.
Could I say something here?
Oh, I think that was my pause to invite you to do just that.
Well, I'm delighted to hear this. This is great news, and I'm delighted that you've risen to this difficult challenge, which I just wanted to let you know that this is one of the most intractable issues with sociocracy: how decisions are made asynchronously. And I posted to the main sociocracy.io the sort of info line, and there was no clear response. But I know there are a number of people around the world looking at how to sort of incorporate Lumio or other mechanisms. So yes, I'd really like to share and join you in this challenge and add to it what I can. But it is quite a challenge that you're facing. So don't be surprised in any way that if it's proving difficult. But at the moment, as of now, I don't know how far you've got. So I'll pause there and hand it back to you.
Well, in terms of answering how far we've got, to me, I think it's understanding who we've divided it up into thumbs up group and a thumbs down group. So there may be 3 or 4 people who are involved in something actively from 1 week, 1 month to the next. And therefore, by definition, we really need to include Alice and Bob. So they're part of the sort of the thumbs up small cohort. And then there's another group, perhaps slightly greater in number, but probably not including the entire collective, who we would invite to just check it out as and when they've got some time. Probably not in 6 months' time, but in the next few days, if they stumble across it in that time scale, that they have the opportunity to dissent, and with good reason, as sociocracy demands. So we're just trying to work out how the stewards represented on this call can help facilitate that process. And part of that, I guess, is understanding the level of a decision. I mean, if a group decides it's going to be mid blue instead of slightly light blue on the website, you know, I mean, may we not put that out for but at the same time, if it was something as fundamental as we're going to change our entire brand, oh, now that might be something where we. So how do we know at what level a decision needs to be raised up? For example, calling for dissent.
I saw something recently that the. I'll let Les go before I answer.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you. I was just reflecting on how everything seems to reflect Brexit, because this is what we're talking about. A 52-48, is that a fundamental, you know, do we refer it back? It's really quite, but in classic,
well, we have until Halloween, so that's fine.
In classic sociocratic terms, it's a paramount objection. If you fear a paramount objection, which I think we would trust each other if we think there would be a paramount objection, which is that it endangers one of our members, or it is not in the interests of Diglife, that someone might say, well, this is putting us at risk. That would be a paramount objection. And so it would be possible if the thumbs down circle agreed by consent that the thumbs up circle can make those decisions for a time limited period, say 3 months, 6 months, and then we review. I think that's you can introduce the process perhaps that way, but there may be other ways. I'm complete.
Sophia?
Yeah, I saw something recently that the Sustainable Economies Law Center did around democracy and nonprofit organizations, and they posted a list of questions that a group would have to ask themselves to know how far to extend participatory decision making. And I'm looking for the photo where they list this, but from memory, it included things of like who is affected by this decision, who would be carrying out this decision, who has made similar decisions in the past. Those are all the ones I remember, but there's about 4 more. So when I find the photo, I can maybe list them somewhere.
Fab, thanks. That sounds very useful.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just, if you don't mind me butting in, to add further that a lot depends and be perfect. However, it does depend on what stage of development the decision-making process is at. Because if it's a new organization, then these codes or protocols can be agreed by consent. So that might be very useful. But for a group that's been meeting for, say, a couple of years, cohort, it can be a more kind of relaxed and realistic way of going about it.
Oh man, I know you were trying to offer that for clarity, but now that's just confused me even more. What you're saying is it's contextual, Les. I can't stand it when it's contextual, mate. Oh, what rules?
Well, it is.
It is.
Like, there's going to be a general election, you're going to hand over. You may want to put some of these decisions, kind of very clear, fantastic idea from the Law Centre to codify what would automatically trigger a objection. But it can't be. You can't know it asynchronously.
Yeah, see, I think this is very important what you just said. To me, this is kind of a sense-making process. You step the entire group through, right? And the more successful you are in doing that, the easier the decision will be, right? Because if you're stuck somewhere where everything is not clear and different directions, you will never get to a decision. If, however, you made some good headway in terms of laying out what the problem is, laying out what approach we're taking and why, so the clarification of that thing, then it's obvious. The decision can become obvious, right? It's almost like a no-brainer at that point to even get into the decision-making.
It would be, I would also respect what I take from sociocracy. I'm not slavish, but I do take a lot from it. It's the idea that to have that facilitator in the team really gives a bit of depth of field, that the facilitator has a slightly different responsibility to the rest of the team. And the facilitator may well have a separate checklist or responsibility to check for any objection. Whereas if you have a chair or you just keep a flat network, then that it could become difficult.
I think it's great if you can have a skilled facilitator always, but I think like the groups that emerged in the collab haven't really assigned a leader or some but the idea that you should get the feedback from everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but hear all the views on something before you make a decision. It happens naturally that, you know, if a decision would affect Joachim and Joachim's not on the call, Christina or someone will call out, we need to include Joachim in the solution. Considering who needs to know is the key thing. Whose consent should we get? And I think the other part of it is working out loud. I think you want to move forward, but you want to give people a chance to object to a decision. You can say, okay, well, us here decide to do this. Then we share that decision with the larger community, not as a mandate, but as, are there any objections? In the meantime, we're moving forward, and maybe we have to change gears, but we're not stalled by the decision process. Take it away.
I'd agree with you, Jim, on certain decisions, but on other decisions, they can be taken locally. So it is how you network the decision making. I mean, in sociocracy, we have our channels, and each channel would have a team, whatever, and it just does its function. Christina does for the whole mapping, and it's only when it kind of impacts on the rest of Diglife would decisions be made relating to, say, the mapping arena.
Yeah,
and those are your stewards, aren't they, basically? So if everything's running quite smoothly, then just carry on as you are. But if something alerts you that this maybe might endanger or be thought to endanger, then just choose a facilitator and just adopt a bit more rigorous process for that item, and then just revert back to where you are. I mean, that's what I mean when it can be kind of quite relaxed. It has to be practical. It has to deliver the goods, sociocracy. Otherwise, don't bother with it. It's not, as far as I know I can see Graham smiling. I don't know whether you've got any thoughts on that, Graham.
No, I agree with you, Les. I think, and I guess the thing I wanted to add in was about notifying people in advance, so people have got a bit of a heads up about what's coming along. So if you're going to have a discussion and you've got a list of things that you're going to make decisions on, then you make that public, sometime in advance of your discussion, so that if people who aren't immediately involved in that decision-making group, they can see that what's coming up, and they can flag up if they're, I think that's really important. There are people in the group might think that it's not, but someone from the other side of the organisation might say, oh, look, that's a real big issue for me, so they can flag it up as such. And then so maybe that decision is deferred or moved to another circle or dealt with in some other way, or that person's invited to speak about that decision.
So I'm going to just hog the mic now, if you don't mind, guys. I think that's in sociocracy, and that's the role of the logbook keeper, which isn't a secretary, it's a logbook keeper who's just constantly aware of, we've got the accounts to check, we've got this to check, we've got a company's house stuff to do, we've got this overhang and previous decisions, we have to bring them forward. And it's the logbook keeper who's just got the log, it's open or not. So he will, before a meeting with the facilitator, work out a likely agenda that fits. So, and with that rolling program that you're suggesting, which is absolutely right, that, one of you guys or someone, or the role can be collaborated or functioned or online, but that some persons will need to be constantly combing through previous decisions and likely coming decisions and feeding into a schedule.
So thanks, Les. So the facilitator role is really critical here. I see that. What I want to circle back now is also to look at the role of the stewards. So that steward circle. What can we do as a group to facilitate decisions across the entire collective, across multiple collectives? And I have an idea. I like to turn this into a card game. Card game as in physical cards. You get a card, you have a task, you have something to do for the rest of us. And let me share my screen here real quick here. I promise, real quick. These are the 5 cards, quote unquote, I've created earlier for this generative governance protocol. And I can see something very similar here for the entire steward group to be able to hand out these cards to individuals or teams in the collective, okay? So the first card here says call for update. That's a standard card to just report back to say, what are you doing? What is this thing you're working on, right? But then we don't stop there. We can actually say, what you just told us, makes no sense. We need more clarity on that. We would sort of hand out another card to say, hey, we need more clarity. You own that card now. This is yours. And come back to us. However you want to figure out that clarity, go back to your team, go back to some stakeholders that participate in that thing, and tell us more about it. And you fulfill that kind of card and role, right? But then we can take it even further and say, okay, whoa, this is something that affects a lot more in the collective, in terms of the stewards having a better understanding of how far-reaching these projects or initiatives are, right? We can say, we get you a card. Oh, that's actually this same color here. This is a call for objection. Give you this card means you have to make sure that you call out to the right people to object or accept your thing that you're building, right? And tell us then as a steward circle, okay, we didn't hear any objection here. Nobody blocked it really in a sociocratic sense. And we can move forward with that. So fulfilled again, right? So you get that fulfilled. And then with the other 2 cards too, right? So that could be, sort of a follow-up action to say, okay, you've done it, you raised your objections, all clear. What are we doing in terms of implementing that thing, right? Or do you need additional funding for that to get it going? So something like this. I'll stop here. It was just a thought I had about, sort of making this a bit more fun, because governance is a very dry concept and can easily get into, big arguments and big discussions. But if we step back a little bit with the steward circle and say they can do certain things, that enables certain things, right? So, and then stop there, right? And then see how they play out in the collective, right? In the different work teams that are actually actively participating and actively engaged in the problem solution thing that they're working on. That could work, I'm thinking, right? I'll stop here.
Well, I like it. I like the card metaphor. Did anyone see a flaw? Steve.
So the problem is that when Les and others are talking, you keep mentioning individuals. And the problem is that the individuals, the facilitators, the logbook keeper, whatever, are actually the weak link in the decision-making process, because at some point, an individual decides what the question is that's going to be asked. And they will make the final edit to the question. They may do it in a small group. But it's absolutely critical that the question is determined by a representation of the group, not by an individual or a small group, especially when that small group is people who are very similar, who may be all white, male, relatively tech savvy, but whatever. And the problem, and I love the idea of sociocracy, but in every committee I've ever seen, the facilitator or the chairperson or whatever guides the committee in the direction they want to go. And their direction is inherently biased. So the problem is how you actually determine what the question to be asked is. I think the cards and everything else is great once you've determined that question. And the other thing is there are some questions which you cannot decide in groups unless a large number of the people who are, let's say, out of context exclude themselves. And this is some simple things like Philip mentioned, talking about colours. If we were talking about spelling, if we were deciding how we spell colour, we'll never agree, right? Because we've got some people from America, some people from England. We're both right? And there is no compromise. The compromise is you don't use the word colour, right? You have to use a hue or a luminance or a whatever, right? So that's the problem I've got. I think actually the process, the sociocratic process and Joachim's cards are incredibly good. I think the problem is the initial question, how you determine that.
I love it, Steve. I think that's a matter of you're sort of staking a framework around these to say, hey, there's some minimum criteria we have to fulfill to make that a valid step. If we haven't reached that, right, well, we can't go further. Let's put that in the context of an actual problem we have, where we need to make a decision, which is picking the pricing model now for the collective. Okay, that's a difficult decision to make, and it has to do with, first of all, we have to understand what that is, right? So pricing model, what do we do in terms of what can we do? What are the different ranges? Is it subscription based? Is it a one-time fee and so forth? So clarity on that, right? And I think to Steve, to your point is, we can say something to the extent of that requires some good amount of research, right? So the framework here is we have to have 5 people on this work team studying that stuff for at least a month, okay? And then come back to us and say what have they discovered, as an example. And then the next step is, okay, we have some clarity around that. Let's see, we as the steward circle here say, well, this is a decision that we need to raise across more people outside the steward circle, and it needs to go into a sociocratic decision process of you can object to that. and then that's the next stage where again you have your framework to say there is an objection, and how do you make that objection? That means you have to have you know, let's say 50% of the collective has to have a voice in this, right? You have to hear from 50% of people, has to, you know, certain diversity has to be included here, and so forth, right? So again, that's the framework for that next step, to make that decision, right? To clear the objection phase of this thing, right? Of the pricing model. Once you're beyond that, you get to the next thing, right? So implementation. There could be another framework attached to that, right? So who's involved, what are the teams, how are they getting rewarded for their work that they're putting into this now, right? And there's this next step in this thing as it plays out. So I do like the idea, Steve, of putting some criteria along these stages, right? And making sure that they're fulfilled. Otherwise, they're kind of invalid. So, I mean, that of course talks to who says they're invalid, right? Who makes that decision to do that? But I think this is an agreement we can work towards and build that into a protocol.
Anyone want to respond to that? I'm conscious that we are at the top of the hour.
Just very quickly, I guess, I would say it feels imperfect, but there's, there's nothing wrong with that, I suppose. I guess the thing to do is to play and test.
I'm just going to take Rosie to
that sounds like a plan. So shall we have a closing out sociocratic round here, just to reflect on this hour in, shall we say, 21 seconds or less? Jim, any reflections, sir, as we finish off the hour?
Well, I'm led back to think about the experiments where we used a computer leader, which is the tools, Yoke Team's tools, and the human leader, which is the facilitator. And we found that groups with either a computer leader or a human leader would reach a consensus. But those that had both did not reach consensus. Half of them followed the computer leader and half of them followed the human leader. I don't know what this has to do with it, but the sociocratic principles and the consent principles, I think if they're instilled in the teams, are going to work most of this out. That's the way we've been working, and it's been successful in my view.
Thank you, Jim. Sophia?
Hi. Hello. Yeah, I mean, I would only say that it'd be great to start a practice of just doing monthly report backs to the general collective or to just general active members of the decisions that the stewards are making, and just starting even this week or this month with the decisions that have to be made around membership dues or renewing membership would be a great place to start.
Like that. And Roy?
Well, from my perspective, just keep putting one foot in front of the other and hope we don't stand on somebody's toes. That's the best I can offer at this stage. So thanks for Les's input particularly. This is it's A, outside my pay grade, and B, new to me. So there we go. Yep. I'm out.
Super. Thank you very much. I should just say hello to David. David, you've joined us right at the end of the hour rather than right at the beginning, which is lovely to see you, but we're just in the closing out round at the moment, just so that you understand where we're at.
Oh, okay. It was on the calendar now as 12:30.
Oh, hang on a minute. Which time zone's that? Steve,
sorry, I mean, which is why I'm here, because I came the same way. I'm so sorry. I know. I realised now I busted into your stewards meeting because it was not linked on the calendar.
Ah,
No.
Well, it's supposed to be the first half hour is supposed to be stewards coordination, and that which is on the operations calendar, and then the second hour is just happy hour for general members to kind of, which is on the community calendar.
So we're in the
Thank you very
happy
much
hour.
for clarifying that.
We're closing the store
Well,
and we're opening the happy hour, right?
Perfect. David, happy to see you for the happy hour. My apologies, I got my wires crossed. Well, we'll just close out of the stewards round then, and then we can be happy. Well, those who can stay on the call. Steve, any reflections?
No, I think what Roy said is absolutely key. Is we need to, and this came up on the call yesterday, which is we need to be talking about real problems and putting one foot in front of the other. This whole issue of the deciding what the decisions is, I think, is a major issue and at the heart of a lot of the problems of the world today, because we're asked to make decisions about the wrong questions. But anyway, that's all from me.
Well, thank you very much for that. So on that, I guess if we make progress here, we are going to solve world peace. That's my interpretation of Steve's contribution there. Let's go to Michael, then Graham, then Les, then Joachim.
Yeah, a very interesting half hour or so, plus the bits before. Feels like rubber and road, although I'm not quite clear whether the rubber is the sociocracy and the road is the cars or vice versa. And besides, when you're talking transatlantic, you've got to watch the rubber word too. That's another problem. So I think we're getting to it, and I think it is about having decisions to make about things that matter. That's going to prove the point. Thank you. I'm complete.
Thanks, Michael. Graham.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a sort of head-first dive back into the shark-infested waters for me, I think. So I've not been involved in these conversations for a little while. So, yeah, reorient myself to that sort of thing. But very interesting. And thanks, yes, to Les for some expert guidance. That's been extremely helpful, I think. That's me.
Well, thank you very much, Graham. Before Les goes, I would also just like to say thank Les for his sociocratic gurudom, and just add that the conversations we're having right now with the likes of the Bates Institute and Radical Exchange and Team Human and Culloden Conversations and etc. This is core to their organising. This is absolutely core. And if we can help them in any small way, it will be a massive improvement. So that's why I've enjoyed the past hour. So I'm complete, Les.
You're on mute, Les.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you very much. I'd love to facilitate any discussion that you would be having in relation to business modelling or whatever, being that I'm outside of that and I know we need to make a decision. Thanks very much.
And to Joachim for his card gurudom.
Cards, it is. So decisions is what make or break these collectives, right? It's if we don't get this right, we run into trouble. We have an opportunity, a window here, I think, to fix. I don't want to say fix it, because to experiment with it, right? Before we get into a zone where we have lots more members, lots more money coming into the collective, and suddenly we have lots more decisions to make with what we do with all this stuff. So I would propose, let me spell this out a bit more, right? What is the decision protocol using sort of a card-based approach? How does that fit into these governance, the steward meetings? I think there's a great overlap between, what the role of the steward is, the meetings and playing these cards, right? And then importantly also to begin sort of lay out a trail here, a knowledge trail, a decision trail, how we got to certain points, right? So others can follow that. That to me is very, very important. It's not only to make the decision in that moment, but also how do we got to that point and how can others follow the same trail to agree or disagree with how we got to that point, right? And that begins to lay it out, I think. I think we are on a good track here to develop a very interesting governance protocol for the collective, and hopefully, you know, a model for other organizations that join us too, to use that same process going forward.
Do you know, as you were saying that, it just struck me that the three words for me are making it visible, understandable, and enjoyable. And if we can get those three, then who doesn't want to take part? David, I won't come to you for well, unless you'd like to, for a checking out, because you just checked in. But so it'd be difficult for you to comment on the past hour. I'm not neglecting you for any other reason. I now unfortunately have to go, so I can't carry on in the happy hour. But for those who want to go to 1:30, then well, I'll have a beer later and toast your good health. So thanks very much, and see you next week. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for see you.
Boy, do we look happy.
Yeah. Well, that was interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I enjoyed that.
So David, do you have any comment, check-in?
Yeah, since I have Joaquin, so on the, I'm following up actually from the Federated Wiki conversation that happened on Wednesday on Ward's regular call. And David Bolville said he'd been talking to you about doing something together. And so I'm trying to back into this because I'm targeting to have a Federated Wiki workshop at the ISSS meeting in Corvallis, Oregon, starting June 28th. And before that, we should actually try to get Diglife and we figure out how we're going to do Federated Wiki within Diglife, and we should have already tried it out by then. So David Bolville is working on something for an open science project in May, at the beginning of May. And so he said like it was 3 weeks away. And so I'm just trying to make sure, and David had said that he would actually set up a meeting within the next week to have a discussion with us all. But my experience with David is that generally he's not a meeting organizer. So I'm just trying to close the loop here. So.
Right.
So Joaquin, could you? So one of the things I think that David was talking about in for Federated Wiki, I kind of understood where he was trying to go with it, which was in effect, the idea is it would be to provide a service to a group of people who actually want to have a Federated Wiki and work on stuff together, but on an infrastructure that would not constrain them, so they could actually move the content elsewhere. So it's a semi-autonomous sort of thing where it's mutual benefit in the beginning and then moving in and out. In the chat that I had put, I can't remember which channel it is. I was asking, are we going to start a channel to discuss Federated Wiki? Because I was putting it on, I'm not sure which channel. Robert was asking about, well, is this a financial thing where in effect we get economies of scale for being all together on the server? And I was saying that my experience with Federated Wiki and what Ward tells me, it's not a heavy application. So it's not about the financials, it's actually about a group that's supportive that would move together on trying to create content.
Yeah, the weight of the Federated Wiki, the weight is not really a concern. It looks like Joachim has left.
No, I'm here.
What concerns me is, with a Docker image with a complete Linux system and basically a virtual environment, the overhead of the environment is what we're concerned about, not the actual FedWiki. And with the Wiki Farm approach, you actually just need one copy of FedWiki for everyone. You can create lots of wikis, just one copy of the code. but it uses a wildcard domain name, which which leads toward running this on a separate server, running FedWiki on its own server rather than trying to create a wiki for each person in Cloud Run, although that would be a nice thing to have also. In any case, I'm willing to, looking to participate in any work studies we want to do to run. I think first we need to just run it and then look up, manually go through the process of adding wikis to the farm, just to learn.
Yeah. So my understanding is that generally they had investigated Docker before, and it was adding so much overhead that that's not the way they've been approaching it. They've been doing each one as a everyone's been doing on DigitalOcean, and so in effect, all you have to do as an individual, if you want to pay $5 a month, is go to DigitalOcean, sign up, install a node server, and then type npm install wiki, and you're done. The wild card is actually a result of the way you use wiki, and this one happening, using it and learning about it makes a difference, because while most of us would tend to think of a wiki as like I have my own wiki, in effect it's kind of like having multiple notebooks, and so if that's the case, the way you get them is having multiple subdomains. And so I was saying that if I had, as an example, what did I say, patterncards.wiki.diglife.com, then I would add on another subdomain, so it would be like affordances dot, and then production dot on top of that, right? So the wild card is a way of keeping the wiki small, because otherwise it's like you'll end up with Encyclopedia Britannica, and it's kind of like, well, no, actually we can actually, separate it out so that we have smaller books. Because the way that Federated Wiki works is that you own it, you're local to it, and so you start off, 10 pages, you click a page, and then it loads another 30, and then you click another page, and it loads another 30 or 100 or whatever. And so it's an exponential thing happening. If your wiki is really large, if you started off with a wiki with 500 pages in it, then obviously it's a big thing. So part of the using of it, and I haven't actually done this myself yet, separating out into subdomains, because that's not the way I had it implemented with wildcards, is I have everything in one wiki right now, probably less than 200 pages. But it's a change of way of working.
The way I've seen the farms stuff being set up, it was for each user to have their own wiki. So we would have a Joachim.wiki and a Jim Scarver.wiki and a Michael.wiki, which is, I guess, is another way to split it up. I don't know. That's another way to give people their own wikis with only, on a single server.
So to me, it breaks up into two pieces here. There's the technical implementation, infrastructure support, how we do that, containerize that thing. That to me is sort of secondary to the use of wikis, right? I'm the person who wants to sort of embed that as a service, in some kind of a corporation as a service. So how does a wiki play into that space, right? So how can an organization take that thing and actually use it for an application, for something they are doing? Give you one example. We just talked about, a governance protocol here for the collective. If you can use these card-based, wiki-based things and embed that firmly into a governance process, right? that'd be a cool application, right? That'd be so helpful for a lot of organizations to not only understand what this is and how it works, but see in the context of a problem that's it's really solving, right? I'm certainly trying to find a good use case for that, going beyond just writing pages and documentation, right? I mean, that's where they came from. This is a highly structured environment where you can begin to spell out your thoughts. But with the federated wiki, you go much further than that, right? It's not just writing pages. You can use any wiki to do that. But that's where you get at the edge of what people understand and how to use these kind of tools, right? So that's the two tracks here. And I mean, in the collective, we encourage obviously experimentation, right? So if you have something set up, share that with the rest of the collective, see how it works, so we understand what it is. To Jim's point, that's critical. Another thing is to actually embed that into one of the services we're starting to put together, right? As a collection of services for other organizations to benefit from, right? And that's a whole other conversation we need to have based on, understanding what that tool is, what it can do, how it can be modified, and so forth, right? And that's, I think, the conversation I had with David was in that direction, right? So obviously he wants to push it forward and, get it into place for some groups. I said, well, let's hold off and see how it actually is being used. Let's help us understand to use it first, and then come up with a plan to embed that in some other things we're putting together here. So that's my point of view. Again, early stages, right? I've used it years ago. Haven't looked at it since then. I do see there's some need to do some front end stuff on that piece. To make that more updated modern user interface thing, right? But other than that, the technology, of course, is fascinating and what Ward has put together there.
Yeah,
I'll stop here.
Alternative of a $5 DigitalOcean machine and creating a CloudRun plugin. I think the CloudRun plugin which would in fact be a Docker image, is a good alternative to the separate server. So I think we probably, although I'm concerned about it, as an alternative to having a separate server, I think it's very reasonable.
The issue is that we haven't got enough people to worry about Dockerizing it yet, I don't think. And so everything is stored in flat files. There's no database associated with it. So it's a pretty simple system. And this has kind of been the chicken and egg problem that we keep having with Federated Wiki. So the alternative, so WordPress is a one-button install on most cPanel accounts, right? And you can actually get it to be a multi-user blog, and it doesn't take any effort to do that. Federated Wiki is not that way because it's Node. And the reason it's Node is that Ward is actually pushing a lot of the limitations that come with Apache servers. It doesn't run Apache. Right, so Node is its own server, and so when you start adding all these other things, in effect, that's why there's been a movement towards Node, is that it's you do away with Apache or Nginx or whatever web server you've got, and he's managing all the stuff himself. So that's why it's a relatively low overhead thing. Because I was asking him, how big a machine do you need? Do you need like a 2 gigabyte machine? He said, well, I'm trying to wonder if you need a 20 megabyte machine. So the questions on infrastructure are a problem that I would like to have because no one is using Federated Wiki enough to stress even the DigitalOcean machine as a single individual. If we had 10 people on a DigitalOcean machine, I don't know if that's going to be a problem or not. But until we actually do it, we won't know.
Well, we can always increase the capacity of the machine. Question is the cost.
Yeah, right. But I have not done, and I'm not an engineer in that way of doing load testing on Federated Wikis because we don't know how much resource it actually takes. Ward's claim is that it doesn't take any resources at all. It takes next to nothing. And so I've never had an issue, but I'm only an individual, and so I don't know what happens to you multiple people running multiple instances or not, because we just haven't had it happen yet.
Well, I'm ready to work on it as soon as a second person is involved. The view is if there's two people involved, it's a cooperative thing.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it isn't.
So Robert was interested. I keep falling out of touch with him, even though we live in the same city. We don't talk very often. So I'll see him on Monday. But it seems to me that we should probably just get a server up and start using it, and see what the load is like.
Just trial and error is the best approach, isn't it, in that sort of context?
Yeah.
It's not going to be too taxing.
Certainly not on me.
So the instant challenge, like if we don't do it with our group, and then it becomes a conversation with David Boville, and so with the group he has coming on at the beginning of May, do we want to try it with them? Like they're actually a real group that's doing open science research, from my understanding. And so, either we create content ourselves, or you get a group of people together that actually want to create content and say, look, we'll just use them as an experiment to find out, how we architect this.
Well, I've got a lot of projects that I could populate conceptually. Be pleased to work with you on that. I'm having to cut my my video off. I've got a bandwidth issue here, but so I'll check you out, David, or in the chat.
Yeah. So before you go, Les, I want to mention the experimentation that we're doing with liquid democracy in our chain. I guess I should put that up during the decision process mechanism, but I'm wondering what your feeling is on how well liquid democracy plays with sociocracy, if at all.
Well, as of this moment, I couldn't comment. I don't have enough information to make any sensible comments. So I'll come back to you on that, Jim. Thank you.
Okay, here's a link to Socialism 2 Design, part on liquid democracy. You just want to go through those slides. That'll give you some background. It's not exactly what we're doing with our chain, but it's close to it. Basically, assigning random delegates for people who register that they can set themselves, so that if a person doesn't vote, their delegate vote counts for them. But if they do vote, their vote counts. And a proposal can be anything. It could be, do you object to this type of thing, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Sounds plausible. I'll have a look.
All right.
All right, we're coming up 1:30, our happy hour extension. Hope everybody's happy here. There's more, obviously more. And Graham, while I have you here, I wanted to continue the conversation also on CVCRM at some point, and the subscription model for the member renewal. So that's a conversation I wanted to have with you and a few others here.
Okay.
What's your schedule the next week?
Let me just have a look. Hold on. So what I'll plan to do is get that data imported over the weekend and get the Stripe integration in place, and then we can focus on just sort of building the form and getting the fields in that we want. So I could do something on Monday. There's a call schedule. There's an Ask Anything type call on Monday afternoon, isn't there? Monday morning your time.
Sounds good. Yep, let's try that.
Can we use that time, or is there something booked in there?
I think we can use that time.
Yeah.
There's no agenda fixed, so
Okay.
that's certainly an important agenda item.
All right. Well, let's aim for that. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Great. Okay, that works for me. I'll get that. I'll make sure I'm there on Monday.
Perfect. Okay, I gotta jump off the call.
Yeah, likewise. Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
Happy Friday.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
That was a good question as to where we discussed FedWiki. Oops, there goes everybody.
Well, not everybody yet, Jim. We're still sort of in reach.
Oh, we lost David. That is a problem. The discussion on FedWiki has been all over the place. You don't have a central place to discuss it. And thinking about it, nothing's going to happen unless take action. So there's a collab work study on Monday. I think we'll set up a FedWiki just to get our get our first step into the mire there.
Yeah. Hi. Just as an aside, hey, Colin, if you're actually audible there, I've just been looking at the notes you were making for Lauren and David Bovell's conversation, the mind mapping system you've got. Very interesting.
You mean the practical ecology one there?
Coggle IT, a note that came off Lauren's notes about the meeting schedules that they've got, and I think it was your stuff, Coggle IT.
I've got a bunch of maps, but the one doing with Lauren is the practical knowledge ecology.
That's it. That's the one I've just seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very dense, intricate stuff. Very interesting. I'll have to have a look at that. Just wanted to comment because you were online, and
yeah, it's kind of an artifact or a residue of what I'm doing. Sort of like me trying to sort through the various nooks and crannies of technology out there, trying to learn where I could be, find my place in these things, working with Joachim Strahl a little bit, and Lauren, and with the different communities. And it seems like the thing I do is map it out, and people are interested in my maps, and it's almost like a side effect of taking part. But really, I'm a software developer, and I'm looking to get my teeth into the software. I set up a FedWiki, talked with David Bovell, and started talking about things there. He's involved in 2 or 3 different communities as well that I'm involved in. Yeah. So a lot of people seem to be involved in different. I'm also a member of our chain, but I've never done a single thing. I did map them out a little bit and watched Lucas Meredith talk about Rolang and how they come up with their different mathematical consensus models, and very, very interesting stuff. I almost understood what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's so many different areas that one can be involved in, and I'm really trying to find my place before I have to jump back into the commercial world of software development for whoever, as opposed to trying to make the world a better place.
Well, that hellish place, yes. I'm Fortunately, I'm unemployable, so I don't have that problem. So,
Well, I hear that a lot from people that they're unemployable, and I don't think that's an option for me. It's an option, isn't it?
you're not old enough.
Well, I'm 50.
No, nowhere near it. No, yeah.
No. Okay. Maybe it's okay. I didn't know it had an age criteria.
Oh, whatever one you like, but it's all wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting, and I think one of the things that David has mentioned is that these maps aren't scalable, and you can't really with the Coggle tool that I'm using, it's difficult. You'd have to make your own tagging system and go through and parse it, and you're just reinventing the wheel again.
It's a skilled art. It looks like you're playing the harp and the bongos at the same time, if you like. Like there's a complex process that is a skill base as well as a technology.
Yeah, so the idea is I find it's most valuable if you can get feedback with people and get them to validate certain areas, which doesn't seem to happen.
Yes, that doesn't, does it?
Yeah, so it's just like the Fed Wiki. You want to stress test it, you got to have like 20 people using it, right? So if you want to build a real map, you got to have more than one person contributing to the map, or else it's just my map of the world.
Well, quite, and the whole stress testing and show it and play it and do it and kick it, and I'm just putting a link in the text chat, since this is really for Jim, but you might find it intriguing too. You see that link, Jim, on the chat? We've finally got a movable installation on the Open Money API. It's been a hell of a job, but we've finally got something that almost works out of the box. There's a little bit of trickiness to get it to actually install, but it's now possible to do, and so everybody can have their own Open Money servers, which is going to introduce an awful lot of the kick the tires level of development, I think, at least I hope. Prior to this, we've only had one existing server, and it was basically, you couldn't see it, you couldn't do much apart from pull curl calls off it, So now you get the whole damn thing on your own machine or wherever you want to put it. And,
awesome.
Well, it opens the conversation, Jim, because you've been mentioning Open Money many times, and I really appreciated your support on that. And I've been very reticent because, God, we couldn't show you anything, Well,
yeah,
now we can almost do that.
I'm most interested in putting it on our chain.
I know, yeah. And I'm interested in getting on the whole chain.
It may be a couple of years still. We're still using stand-in systems for stuff that's going to be on our chain.
Of course. Yeah.
This this is something that perhaps we could use today.
Well,
waiting for our chain to mature.
Anything you use on our system is immature. We're not even at alpha in some respects for this, but it's a proof of concept that allows people to play with it and make some sense out of it. Whereas previously there was no way to make sense out of what we were doing.
Yeah. Well, how stable is it? Am I going to lose my tokens?
Yeah, there are no tokens. It's Open Money, my friend. It's all marks in space. There is no such thing as a token.
Oh, okay.
But no, that was the biggest problem. We were trying to get people to play with the system, but it was like asking them to program through a keyhole into a dark room with a blindfold on. They weren't that excited about it. So now you can see all the machinery. You get the API, you get your own little engine. You can play around. So when you get some time, Jim, let's play, and I'll show you what it actually does, because it does some interesting things.
Let me know.
I'll keep you posted. It's got another couple of days of doodling. I haven't, in fact, got external access yet, so because I can't assign ports. I'm not good at that stuff, so I'm waiting for a friend.
Well, I'd be very interested as well to kick the technology on this, and as well to do a mini interview to try to map out what it is that you were doing so that it can fit into the ecosystem as well, Jim, and the art chain things, because I find the best way to learn things is from the people that are in it as opposed to reading about it. So, because things change so quick, right?
They do indeed.
And you get the different flows. Like I've heard about liquid democracy, but I thought that it was something that got tried and wasn't being used anymore. I can't remember where I heard that.
I'm sure there's plenty of places where they tried and then abandoned or gave up on the edge, but I know there's a lot of interest in this. David was quite strong on it, I believe, and we had some contacts in the Bay Area who were talking about using elements of this as well.
Yeah, so chasing things back to their foundation, where they came from, and how they've grown.
Mm-hmm.
Also have an interest in education, so onboarding people who might be interested in this kind of development would want to onboard to this kind of stuff. I think everybody's looking for onboarding onto their own product, but I'm looking to onboard people to the environment so that they're not into any one thing.
Meta onboarding,
but basically to become informed on where you do want to go, so you just don't go with the first thing that you see.
Direction,
yes.
A little bit of coherence and direction is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to break at this moment, but Colin, yes, let's do it. Let's chat, or let's happy anytime.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the Mattermost with the Diglife community, so you should be able to find me. I'm under the handle Jesso, Jesso.
I'm MWL.
MWL. Okay.
And let's connect there. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. So reach out anytime that you have 30 minutes to kick off.
Are you east, west, middle, or where?
I'm Atlantic.
Okay. All right.
So that's an hour ahead of Ontario or New York.
Well, that's 4 hours then, because I'm Pacific.
Right now it is 1:30 for me, 2:30 or something here.
Well, then we've got 3 hours then.
2:40 right now.
Oh, 4 hours. 4 hours is our split then. Great.
So you're like California or some time zone.
Nothing is like California, and I'm not. And we're further north. We're Canadian. We don't even think about that.
So you're from Vancouver.
Vancouver Island, actually, a bit further out beyond the.
Oh, very good. So a couple of Canadians.
Oh, you're a Canadian.
Yeah, New Brunswick.
All right, well, there you go. Let's take over the world. Rule on.
All right, nice meeting you.
Okay,
talk to you later. Thanks.
Bye. Bye, Jim.
Where's Jessica?
Come to archive in a second.